Michael Jackson was done with Sony a long time ago. Or so he thought. Now they're selling a bunch of his unreleased music. Doesn't that tell you maybe something's wrong? It should. Care to know what? Do you just want to blindly buy from an entity that badly abused someone you love? What is love? Is it giving money to a victim's abuser? Because that's what you're doing. And there are no excuses for it. There are only excuses for you to buy from Sony, so you can get what you want. Because what you want matters to you more than Michael Jackson. If that's the case, fine. But don't say you love Michael Jackson. Because when you claim that, you are in fact loving more what you can get from him. And by doing this, you are rewarding the entities that abused him all his career by giving them your money. Michael's legacy has already been written in history. If not one person bought another song of his, nothing would change that. Nothing. So that excuse does not wash. The media? 2 words will explain the issue to them. And it's a short enough soundbite that even they will understand, and it will be impossible for them to twist it. Those 2 words: Sony sucks. Why should people who truly love Michael Jackson be cowed by the media into financing his abusers? That's horse-pucky. What did Sony do that was so bad? To find out, you have to be willing to read and learn more about Sony. And ditch the excuses. Sony has manipulated Michael Jackson in life and to death to get and keep control of Sony ATV and the MeJack catalogs. These items are what is worth most in his estate. The dollar figure is in the billions, with a capital B. Profits go to Sony, John Branca, and John McClane. Catherine and the kids get a monthly allowance from the estate. That amount is the same each month. That will not change, no matter how much Sony sells of Michael's unreleased music or other things with his name and likeness on it. Speaking of what's theirs though, what is theirs is Michael's legacy, all of that released and unreleased music, and in particular and most importantly, those catalogs, the Sony ATV and MeJack catalogs. But lo and behold, those are, as planned by Branca and Sony, slated to go to Sony at first chance that it can be arranged without looking too suspicious. Sony made it obvious through the years that it in no way intended to let ownership or control of Sony ATV or Michael's own MeJack catalog to remain with Michael. They have manipulated him incessantly to keep those catalogs in their sights and under their control. Having him conveniently out of the way now clears the path for them to carry out their well-known long-term plan to get complete ownership and control of both of those catalogs, with the added convenience of help from John Branca and John McClane. I guess we should just ignore all that though, in favor of ignorance, and for drooling over what we'll get out of Michael's demise, new releases, new music, some new concert footage, or whatever. Is that what it's all about? What we get for ourselves? Michael wrote a song called What More Can I Give? I guess for some MJ fans, it is What More Can I Get? Never mind the incredibly odd circumstances surrounding his death, the ethical issues with the execution of his estate, Sony's past and present money-making machinations, and the theft of the biggest part of his legacy from his children. Just gimme. That certainly is Sony's mantra when it comes to Michael Jackson too. What more can we get? That's what it's all about, isn't it? But it's the very antithesis of all Michael was, and what he was about. He died because of this. In a word, greed. What will change, if enough of Michael's fans wield their power of refusing to buy MJ merchandise from Sony, is not the amount of money Catherine and the kids will get, but rather the amount of profit Sony and John Branca, John McClane will make off of Michael's death. He was worth more dead than alive, and various vultures that had surrounded him all his life knew that. This flock of regulars suspiciously constellated in his life once again in the weeks before his murder, and that will from 2002 is highly suspect. I'm not going to pay what could be his murderers for what they have done to him, in life or death. And I'm not going to help them steal their father's legacy from his children. All Michael Jackson fans have the power to prevent Sony from profiting off of Michael's death by simply not buying any MJ merchandise from them. And just in my own opinion, if you truly love Michael Jackson, the human being, not the commodity, you have not only the power, but the obligation to see that Sony does not profit off of his murder, particularly if there is any suspicion that they may have been involved in it. Based on Michael's own comments through the years before he died, Sony's rabid penchant to keep control of him and his catalogs over the years, the questionable circumstances in which Michael died, and the ethical issues with the will, Sony's involvement is possible. John Branca speaks for John Branca and Sony, not Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is dead. And when he was alive, we saw and heard what Michael had to say about Sony. And it was a very different story. What we get is irrelevant. If it is dripping in Michael Jackson's blood, I do not want it. I do not care what it is. We do know that many things certainly don't add up. And we do know who many of the vultures were who surrounded Michael over the years, and how they were trying to manipulate and control him for money, and how some of them once again suspiciously constellated around him just before his death, seemingly ready to take control. Many questions are unanswered, and those likely involved are tight-lipped about their bloody ruse. Sony in particular has often been the quiet manipulator behind the scenes in Michael's life, their tentacles reaching into the smallest and most unsuspected corners of his affairs, particularly his financial affairs. One thing is certain, the official party line were being fed by the powers that be, e.g., Sony, Branca and the estate, and certainly the garbage were daily fed by the medialoids, is not the truth. They lie to maximize their profits. They use you. Sony is evil. Don't buy any MJ-related Sony products. Don't let Sony use you. Close your wallets to them. It is up to you to make that change. Think about Michael, the human being, and what he went through, before you make any decisions to buy something MJ-related from Sony. Thank you for your attention. And this is for you, Sony.